and welcome to Money Matters with Shannon Jackson, personal finance show focused on moving you forward financially. On today's show, we're going to discuss the recent RBC survey that shows the impact that inflation continues to have on the lives of Canadians, so much so that many now believe financial uncertainty has become the new normal. Today, we're reaching out to our viewers who are feeling this way and hopefully give you some useful advice. We're going to discuss the survey findings in detail and what they're telling us. And we'll share advice on how having a financial plan can help you stay on track or get back on track, no matter what life or the current economy throws at you. Joining me to discuss the RBC survey in detail is Craig Bannon, Director of Regional Financial Planning Support at RBC Royal Bank. Craig, welcome to Money Matters, and thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me. Really looking forward to this.
Before we get into our discussion, can you share a little bit about your background and what your role is at RBC?
Yeah, I'd love to. Thank you. So I've been with RBC for 30 years now. I've been a certified financial planner with FP Canada for about 26 years. In addition to being a trust and estate practitioner with STEP, the Society of Trust and Estate Practitioners, for 22 years. I have a Bachelor of Commerce from St. Mary's University in Halifax, an MBA from the University of Ottawa, and spent most of my career in and around financial planning and wealth management and advising clients either directly or through the teams that I work with.
So you've been in the industry right from the very beginning, it sounds like, right from post-secondary.
Absolutely.
You have lots of experience, and that's great. So before we get into the details of the survey that was conducted by RBC, what are your initial thoughts about the overall response from the survey that says that the majority of Canadians now believe that financial uncertainty is the new normal?
Yeah, it certainly seems that way. And this was pretty consistent across the country, and especially in Ontario, and where we found that about 6 in 10 Canadians felt that way, that that uncertainty around their finances was becoming the norm, and even slightly higher in Ontario than national, about 62% compared to 59% nationally. And so it was I wouldn't say completely surprising, but I think it's great awareness for us to have as we're advising Canadians with respect to financial uncertainty and how they can help address those areas of concern that they're having, which we're going to talk about today.
Well, just as sort of concerning is the number of the participants that answered the poll. They're reporting that they have never been more stressed out about money than they are right now. Nationally, 48% of people are feeling this way. And here in Ontario, it's more like 50% of people. So to me, that's half of the population that is feeling, that has never before felt this stressed out about money. You just mentioned that this isn't surprising. Is it something that we should all be sort of focusing on right now, or should we be concerned about how many people are feeling this way?
Yeah, I think we should, because sometimes we think about our health when it comes to stress, but I think stress is something, and financial matters are related for a lot of Canadians, a lot of folks in Ontario, and half basically is expressed through this poll, and I think it's sometimes, unfortunately, when folks start to experience a higher level of stress, sometimes it can lead to inaction and just kind of freezing on that topic and wanting to ignore it. And that doesn't make it better. It typically makes it worse, right? So I think being aware of this and how elevated it is, the level of stress for folks right now around finances and uncertainty, hopefully provides, folks an idea to want to start to take a bit more control over their financial situation, and for us as advisors to be able to be prepared and proactively look to help folks with getting a bit more, try to reduce that stress by becoming more aware of their current situation and what they could be doing going forward to help themselves even more.
We know that Canadians are facing an affordability crisis. The rising cost of living due to inflation, interest rates keep creeping up, and it's really taking a toll on the finances and financial well-being of everyone across the country. And the RBC survey shows really some harsh financial realities, unfortunately. And we're going to sort of focus on this right now, more focusing on the personal finances in general to start off. The survey said that about 77% of Canadians say they would like to save more, but they just can't because of the rising costs. And here in Ontario, the percentage is actually a little bit higher. It's more like 80% of the people in Ontario are feeling this way. And many are worried about continued inflation into the next year. 2/3 of people say they won't have enough to cover any kind of unexpected expense or even perhaps cover their current expenses. And among Ontario, the percentages, again, are even higher, with more than 3/4 of people, about 78%, are worried about an unexpected expense, and 2/3 are worried about being able to manage their current expenses. And again, many are also worried about taking on debt in order to make ends meet. About 60% of people across the country are worried about this. So these percentages are really signaling how tight household budgets are at the moment. Do you have any thoughts about this?
Yeah, I have lots of thoughts about this. I think it is quite concerning. However, I do believe there's one silver lining here, and it's one of the first things you mentioned just now is that 3/4 of Canadians would like to save more, but can't because of rising costs. I think the fact that folks would like to save more tells me a lot. It tells me that they have something they would like to save towards. It means they've thought about what are their goals. So what are their goals in life, not just around financial, but some of those goals, cost money. And so once you've identified what those goals are that you would like to save more towards, then you can plan for that, right? So you can work with an advisor to determine, okay, what is my current situation related to what I'd like to be able to do in the future? And what are my options in terms of things I can do now? Or if I don't think I can change anything now, what could I do in the future if things should improve that will help me on the path towards achieving those goals? So I think it is concerning that folks feel like they can't save more now. We've all experienced the elevated costs. You mentioned inflation. Seems to be coming down a little bit closer to where the Bank of Canada would like, but it's still not quite there. We're all feeling that at the grocery store and at the gas pump, right? But I think if we can start to help folks look a bit forward, in the next year or two, if you could save more, if your expenses went down or income changed, and what could you do at that point that would show you down in the long term how things might be able to change for you, how you might be able to set yourself up for success on these things that you would like to save more for, right? So while it is very concerning, I think that's the first step is understanding what you're trying to do and then work on a plan and to get there.
I like that you said that having a goal that does sort of give you that light at the end of the tunnel. So I like that you mentioned that, and more along the lines of being able to save. A lot of people are struggling, or actually many Canadians don't have that emergency fund to help us with those unexpected expenses. Can you talk a little bit about the importance of that fund?
Yeah, for sure. There's maybe at least two elements to that. One is that if something does happen, whether it's a job loss or an interruption or things like that, having a bit of money to fall back on to be able to use to cover expenses for a period of time is very helpful financially, but it also provides a lot of peace of mind, and it can be a reducer of stress for folks, knowing that if something should happen, they do have that to fall back on. Some people call it an emergency fund, some people call it a cash reserve, things like that. It's usually more helpful to have that saved if folks have perhaps a line of credit at a reasonable cost, whether that's on their home or otherwise, in a temporary basis. But one of the things you don't want to do when you're potentially in a situation where you need to draw on something is to take on more debt. So to have the savings, have that in the short term, but then have an ability to save up a bit of an emergency fund or cash reserve can be very helpful financially and with peace of mind and reducing stress. But a lot of folks feel like they'd like to get there, and that's one of the things that they're finding challenging right now is actually doing the saving for that.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. Can you go into a little bit more detail about what are some of the other top financial concerns that Canadians are feeling right now, according to the RBC survey?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, there's a number of them, right? We talked briefly about inflation earlier. You know, most Canadians are worried about inflation and the rising cost of living, right? It's pretty consistent nationally, 87%, Ontario, 86%. So pretty much almost everybody. And you know, we've seen that from Stats Canada, right? Inflation's been around that 3-4% range. You know, August it went back up slightly, and we're paying more for everything, right? So it does put a pressure on the monthly budget. It also puts pressure on the ability to save for other for other goals, right? So yeah, I mean that would be one of the major concerns. We're a bit in a waiting pattern right now to see what happens with, for example, interest rates, right? For folks that have debt, whether that's a mortgage or other personal debt or car loans and things like that are on a variable basis, they're listening to those announcements more acutely now than perhaps ever to see what's happening with their payments. And over the next while, the Bank of Canada has suggested that they'd like to try to get inflation back down, to within their target range. And I think if you poll a number of economists, they feel that over the next year or so, we should be able to see those rates moving, slightly in a more downward direction, hopefully, which should help in both, freeing up that monthly cash flow for other expenses, and hopefully bring the inflation back under control at the same time. Those would be some things to start with.
We sort of want to shift to talking about saving for our futures. The need to rely on savings to cover everyday expenses has many people worried about their retirement plans, and we're struggling to get by. What does the survey tell us about the impact that inflation has had on the retirement plans of Canadians?
Yeah, there's definitely two ways to look at this. One is the retirement plans for folks that are saving up for eventual retirement. And the other way to think about this is for folks that are already retired. What we've seen in this poll is that nearly a quarter of folks, so 2 in 10 or a quarter of folks that are already retired are thinking or feeling that they may need to come out of retirement and pick up some at least part-time work, or maybe they retired a bit earlier than they were going to, and feel like it's not going to be sustainable. Some of the reason for that is that they may not have ever sat down and actually put a plan together with an advisor to see what their future will look like if they continue on the path they're on. They might be completely okay if they were able to do that work, with an advisor. But yeah, folks are feeling that way, whether it's, part-time work. With folks that are still planning for retirement, those are thinking they may need to work longer, right? They may have a planned age or year or years of service at their employer or whatever it might be, a target in mind. And a lot are feeling, about 4 in 10 are feeling like they're going to need to push that retirement goal out a year or two, possibly longer. And we're also, we're hearing from many clients that they're more and more considering their options in terms of, could I work part-time? Could I, even stay in the same role or in the same industry and go more to a part-time, kind of a step down, a transition towards retirement? And maybe I go to half-time or three-quarter time or whatever it might be that would work for them and for their employer, as that, and gradually start to enjoy some of the things they want to do that they look forward to in retirement, while being able to continue to maintain some income and potentially even continue saving, for that longer term retirement.
A lot of really good information so far. And I just want to say to those who are watching, if you are relating to the information that you're hearing from this survey, we're going to have some great advice for you coming up after the break when Money Matters returns.
This program is brought to you by Ignite TV. Now you're in command. Visit Rogers.com for more details.
It's closing time, and you stayed out longer than you planned. So now you can't drive, and the buses have stopped running. You could always call your girlfriend. Or maybe your roommate? What about your best friend? You could just dial 1-888 Taxi Guy or use the Taxi Guy app. The call and the app are free, and they both connect you to a local cab company to bring you home safely. Visit ArriveAlive.org to find out more. Arrive Alive, drive sober.
Focus better.
Partner better.
Sleep better.
Breathe better.
Love better. Work better. Friend better. Unwind better.
Everything gets better when you get active.
Welcome to Money Matters with Shannon Jackson. My guest today is Craig Bannon, Director of Regional Financial Planning Support at RBC Royal Bank. And we've been discussing a recent RBC survey that suggests financial uncertainty has become the new normal for many Canadians as inflation eats into their savings and limits their financial security into the future. And so, Craig, I kind of want to focus and start to give some advice for our viewers. We know that the RBC survey shows there are people that are struggling to keep up right now. And for those that are struggling, how can a financial plan help you stay on track or maybe even get you back on track?
Yeah, definitely. What we've found over the years through many different polls on retirement and other financial matters is that many folks in Canadians and in Ontario especially tell us that they don't really know where they stand. They don't really know what they need or what they need to do. And that's largely because they haven't maybe ever or recently sat down with an advisor or a financial planner to look at a long-term projection about what their future will look like based on the current path that they're on and based on the current situation. So that knowledge, is powerful to be able to say, okay, I understand where I'm at now. And then working with an advisor around what are some strategies that I could put in place, whether I'm able to do them now or in the future, that will help me get closer to being able to achieve those goals that I have, whether those are short-term goals or long-term goals. So just really having that peace of mind and that sense of knowing what your current situation actually looks like, and then being able to adapt and adjust and try out different scenarios that can show you, different paths to be able to achieve the goals that you have. So it brings a lot of peace of mind for folks, and plans can be adjusted and adaptable, right, over time. So, for example, at RBC, we have a platform called My Advisor, which you can sit down and work with an advisor on, either virtually, like over video, like this call, or on the phone or in person, and then you have access to that on an ongoing basis. You can log in anytime you want and see how you're doing. And that brings, again, a lot of peace of mind for folks that not only do I know today, but I can make adjustments along the way.
And how important, we know a budget is one of the critical things as part of our financial plan. Are there certain things that people should be focusing on when it comes to generating that budget for the family?
Yeah, definitely. When it comes down to budgeting, some people like to call it a spending plan because it's a bit more positive, right? Some people don't really like the term budgeting because it feels very restrictive and limiting. So really what it boils down to is knowing what's coming in and what's going out, right? What are your incomes? And if you're in a household situation, a family situation, what are all the incomes that are coming in? And then what are the fixed costs, right? What are our living expenses? What costs do we have to pay out every month, whether that's rent or a mortgage and utilities and car payments and things like that. And then what's left over once we've done that exercise, and those become kind of what a lot of people refer to as their lifestyle expenses, the things you might choose to spend money on, whether that's travel or entertainment or going out for dinner and things like that. And when it comes to that type of spending, people seem to enjoy saying, okay, I can spend, $300 a month on this category or $500 a month on this category. And you're spending up to that rather than feeling like every time you're spending money, you shouldn't be doing it, right? So if you've done the work and you've looked at the incomings and the outgoings, it's usually a lot more enjoyable experience than the typical budgeting concept, but it's worth doing. It is worth doing, right? And there's a lot of apps now and if you're doing online banking, for example, at RBC, we have one called Nomi, which is where you're looking at your accounts and you're saying, okay, you have a couple options. I can set budgets in there, right? And it will tell me how I'm doing against those. And it'll also, there's an option where you can do find and save, where it says, okay, well, it knows your spending patterns, and it knows that, okay, right now you don't need this $75 or that $50, and it will help you move that over into a savings account to kind of, without really even realizing it, you're actually being able to save towards your goals more than maybe you thought you could.
Those automated features very useful because you don't have to think about it, so I think that's great that the banks have a feature like that. And so we know that when people are having a difficult time with their finances, investing in their savings and their financial future does seem to sort of take a back seat, and it doesn't become a priority anymore. And the RBC survey definitely reflects this. About 77% of Canadians, including 78% of people here in Ontario, say they would like to save more, but they just can't because of rising costs. And 3 out of 4 people worry about their ability to save for their future. So for viewers that are feeling these concerns, what's your advice to them?
Yeah, what it really comes down to is making choices for a lot of folks. So as I mentioned earlier, when we're doing that budgeting or that spending planning exercise, we certainly all have fixed costs that we just can't avoid, paying for every month. And sometimes we have other expenses that we're choosing to spend money on out of the rest of our disposable income, out of the rest of the money that's going into our bank account every month. And so if we're feeling like we can't save towards potentially a future goal, that means we may be making a choice to spend more money now, right? So one of the things we do when we're working through financial plans with clients is to think about what are some of those preferences that folks have versus maybe it's a little bit of short-term pain for long-term gain, however you like to phrase that. Am I able to reduce my spending a bit over here because this other goal is more important to me, right? So it may come down for some folks to once you understand that level of detail of what my capacity to spend or save is, then it's making that conscious decision. Am I going to spend that money this month, or am I going to save it for something in the future, right? So that's certainly an option for most folks.
There's this expression that you hear that you should pay yourself first. Is this a strategy that is legitimate during a time of sort of financial uncertainty?
Yeah, it can become even more important because when costs are rising and expenses are going up, if we don't have that forced saving strategy, it often becomes a forgotten option, right? We meant to do that, and next thing 3 months have gone by and we haven't moved any money over to investments or retirement plans and things like that. So if one has the option, whether it's a group plan through an employer, which many of our clients have now, they're able to have that come right off their payroll into a group RSP. And if I would just ask your employer if they have something like that. If they don't, let's talk about that. And if that's not an option, then having that automatic transfer coming out of your account, whether it's, some people find it more frequently to be easier to manage. I know a lot of clients, myself included, will do something where if you're getting paid biweekly, the day you get paid or the next day, you have an automatic transfer out of your account into a savings plan. And that way, what's left, what you're thinking is left to be able to spend, has already taken into account the fact that you've saved what you wanted to. So yeah, so paying yourself first, very important. And also depending on how you're saving, whether if it's into registered retirement plans, for example, that's going to help you at the end of the year when you do your taxes, and you may be able to see a bit of a refund there, which you can use, to either save towards other goals or pay down debt or, to spend on other goals you have in that coming year.
You talked earlier about the effect that the rising cost of living and interest rates is having on those people who are either already retired or are nearing retirement. And you also mentioned that many people are even considering having to return to work, or they're delaying their retirement plans. Do you have any advice for those people that are specifically in those retirement years?
Yes, definitely. One of the areas that a lot of people will focus on is, accumulating savings towards future goals. So we call it accumulation. What most people don't focus as much on is how they're going to spend those savings over time to help achieve those goals, including retirement, living costs, and that we call decumulation. And that's an area where people can really benefit from spending some time now while they're saving before they're even retired to think about what is that retirement paycheck going to look like? I'm not going to be getting it from my employer anymore. And if I was if I just had an RSP or defined contribution pension plan I was saving into, how am I going to decumulate that over time to meet my spending goal? Now, some people may also have a defined benefit pension plan, and that'll be part of their retirement income. Many people will have CPP or old age security, and those will form part of it. So that's becomes quite complex for many people to think through. So we back in April, we announced that we've brought out a new, what we're calling an RBC financial plan, which is powered by Conquest Planning. And that enables us to show clients both what will happen through the accumulation stage as they're saving for things like retirement, and also that decumulation. What might be some of those best ways in the future to use those resources, pensions, government benefits, right, savings, to be able to fund those goals, to really give them that peace of mind that they know exactly where they'll stand. And even for folks already in retirement, if they don't have that level of clarity around that, they should be coming in and meeting with an advisor and going through that process as well, as it might be better off, they might be a bit better off than maybe they think.
In a couple of minutes that we have left, can you just talk about, you just talked about it just there in the answer to that last question, what are the benefits to talking to a financial professional?
Yeah, there's many. There was an FB Canada survey that came out recently that talked about how much more confident, Canadians are with their finances when they're working with a financial planner than if they're not, right? A lot of it comes down to understanding and knowing. Some of the other benefits include really understanding how much I can save on a monthly or an annual basis. And if it's not today, what might change in my future situation that's going to give me that ability to save, down the road, right? Working with an advisor, you typically become more disciplined in actually managing and monitoring your spending over time. Those would definitely be some of the benefits.
Just wrapping up, do you have any final advice for our viewers?
I think really just come in and meet with an advisor, right? Review your financial situation, develop a retirement projection or financial plan, right? Ensure your investments are on track and in line with your goals, right? Think about credit that you do have. Not all debt is bad, right? So have those conversations around what are my options for if I do have some debt, making sure you've got everything going on for you that's going to give you that peace of mind and financial, simplify your financial life a little bit, set things up automatically, even go so far as make sure you've got an up-to-date will, your beneficiary designations and powers of attorneys are up to date, which will be involved when you're working through financial planning. Just to really make sure that you're comfortable and confident that what you want to have happen going forward will happen.
For anyone who wants to connect with you and get some more advice from you, how can they do that?
Yeah, I'd suggest folks go to rbcfinancialplanning.com. And we've also launched a new website in the RBC website called Your Money Matters. So just search RBC and Money Matters, and you'll find over 700 articles on all the topics we talked about today.
Well, Craig, thank you so much for being here, taking the time to share your excellent advice. And I also want to thank you, our viewers, for watching. Until next time, I'm Shannon Jackson.
Call the Rogers TV Viewer Response Line. Email us or connect with us on social media.
After a night out with your friends, there's always options for getting home safely. You could call your BFF, your mom or dad, whoever you can count on for a safe ride home.